we can actually assemble this over top of them, go down into the tube as a rescue operations, assemble the tube over top of them, clean their airway out, and at least maintain an airway. And then how the system works, basically, it has this shovel. And this shovel is designed strictly for this. It's a pull the pin. It operates off of a railing system, as you can see there. It's beveled to where you can drive it down and get it into the grain. Because believe it or not, I didn't know the grain is actually like quicksand, but at the same time, it holds a little bit more to it, so it gives you false hope when you're standing on the corn or the grain, whatever it is. And as the system goes into place, it's just kind of like a puzzle. And as you can imagine, let's just say that there was somebody's head there. Now also, you're working in low light conditions. There's 4 on this one. But for the sake of us just assembling it, we're just going to put the 3 together.
Okay.
You can do 3 or 4. Okay. Now, obviously, this is going to be at your height. And then those are what the hammers are, because you're going to be standing here. You could use your hands to get in here to do any kind of thing. You can stand on it. It's pretty buoyant. And the ultimate goal of this thing is to save lives. And I think that they're onto something. And I believe this is going to be a tool. Now, when you're able, once this gets, mashed down into the grain, you have a little bit more of a working area and a platform that you could use. One thing that we found out, being in the grain and moving around in it, is, like I was saying, it was like quicksand. So there was like the little crates that you would haul like Pepsis, and we're going to be getting some of those. You flip those upside down, and they become your working platform.
Oh, yeah.
And so the class was very knowledgeable for us, and I think that at the end, if we save one life, it's worth it.
One comment I make there is that by being in smaller pieces, you can get through about any size door.
Correct.
And that's the thing you used to run into. The doors were so small with big rescue tubes that you couldn't get them in.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why whenever they design this is designed to be put together inside. So you're always going to have one rescuer in the hole, and then you're going to have the person bringing the pieces to you, and you're setting these things up as you go. Because suffocation is the main thing. I mean, the air we were actually in an open grain bin, and just with us stepping around the grain dust, there was a lot of people who was having sinus issues from the grain dust. So you enclose that into an area to where that grain dust has nowhere to escape. When a person goes down in there, suffocation is a pretty key fact.
Sure.
And then from the past and what I've read after taking the class, what ends up happening is that people start hollering, gasping for air, and then their airway just gets overcome with the grain, which causes suffocation. Ultimately, they perish. And as you can see here in the demonstration, these are showing somewhere. Let me hold that down so you can see it. That is actually the grain bin material that pretty much all grain bins are used for. Now there is, we won't get into the design of a grain bin, but it requires some pretty heavy artillery.
That's pretty heavy metal.
Yeah, this is pretty heavy duty stuff, and there may come a time, depending on how much grain is in, to where the rescuer also, where will still have to open up the grain bin.
Let the
and
grain
allow the
out
grain
so
to
you
go
can,
out.
yeah.
And a rescuer will have to ride this tube down with the victim. So that's why it's kind of all set up the way that it's set up. The inventors of these things had safety in mind, strictly 100% safety,
Sure.
and they had farmers in mind. And let's face it, you know, we already know that people have died in not just grain bins. They've died in just the haulers, like the toters and stuff.